The Brazilians are no strangers to major titles, with 4 out of the 5 players plus Zeus being double major champions. After a disappointing 2018 relative to their successes in 2016 and 2017, today we'll be profiling this Brazilian reunion, and we'll be assessing whether we'll see a return to the Brazilian flair that made this exact lineup so dangerous from the spring to summer of 2017. So this is probably going to be the most difficult team profile to make, since this lineup has only played 5 maps total. Now coming into this lineup, they changed 2 players and a coach, and outside of broad strokes, I don't think it's a good idea at all to just assume their traits are carried over into this lineup. So during this video, basically everything I'm going to say is based off those 5 games, and obviously this is a very small data set. So the places in which what I say actually pans out to be off the mark will actually be most interesting, I think. So obviously take all of this with a pinch of salt, and I'll do my best to give a measured opinion on MIBR at this moment in time. So in terms of evaluating their map pool overall, I can kind of have a guess from the vetoes, but really no more than that. And I'm sure the other teams will have exactly the same issue coming into the quarterfinals when deciding what to veto against MIBR. So anyway, let's get into this. And the map they played the most, they played it 3 times during the major so far, and it is Inferno, and we're going to start off on the terrorist side. So from watching the games during the major so far, their banana control from the terrorist perspective looks really great actually. They're clearly very comfortable with contesting it, and it takes fast and concise communication to do this really well, and it looks like they have this in this current lineup. So just like previous lineups of MIBR going back into SK, MIBR fully use the clock on a good number of rounds on the terrorist side of Inferno. They really like to wait out that CT side and then go all the way down to the last second to get that bomb plant down. Now during these Inferno games that I watched, they're playing a fairly aggressive economy game, and they really weren't scared to force around a couple rifles with pistols, getting some nades out to try and get some things done and reset that CT side. And it's actually been a trend in recent months for teams to force up when on 1,900 money, and the thought process is that even if you save into a 4,300 buy, the buy isn't really that good anyway when you can just buy around the guns that you have got, get some nades going, and play a fairly similar round actually. So from what I saw in these games, they're pretty decent at playing on low and force buys, but perhaps they could add a couple specific force strategies if they're going to do so this often. Now during these Inferno games on the terror side, they had some team play mistakes and some really strange calls actually, and I think for the most part this is probably just teething problems, this being a new lineup. So from what I've seen, MIBR's team fundamentals at this moment in time is just not on par with Astralis, Liquid and Na'Vi, and you probably would expect that considering how short amount of time this lineup has been together again. Now, if they're going to play Inferno, they're going to have to make up for this sort of thing in other areas if they want to get a good round haul, especially on the terrorist side. So certainly during these games that I watched, the highlight was coldzera, and during late round situations, he was such a monster in these games. So many clutch plays, and I can assure you that coldzera is here to play in Katowice, which is definitely going to be really exciting going into the playoffs. So moving on to the CT side of Inferno, I have to say, from what I've seen, their CT Inferno looks pretty good from what I have seen. So it looks to me like they've put quite a lot of work into CT banana control, and they actually get the control a decent amount of the time, definitely more I would say than average for the top level of Inferno. So because of this, they often play 3 towards B early, and this has become quite standard for the top level teams, and during these games they didn't actually get their bluff called very much. It'd be interesting going forward in the tournament, better teams with more prep, more used to actually calling bluff and this sort of thing. If they actually get their bluff called, people going fast through the mid smoke, taking fast brackets, this sort of thing. So in terms of their CT banana control, they have a good variation in their takes, and having players like Phelps and Fur is a big bonus when you want to run fast CT banana takes where you smoke on the terrace car molly, go in front of it, deep mid molly, perhaps a deep banana molly from that banana area, and both of these players really thrive in these aggressive duels, so I think it really just suits them really well going for these aggressive takes. So on the CT side of Inferno, their go-to tends to be double AWPing. It kind of has been this way through a couple previous lineups. Now Fallen tends to pick up the first AWP towards the B rotated position, and Cold will pick up the second towards that A bomb site, and Cold AWPing the A bomb site always looks a bit strange because he always moves all over the place. He actually likes AWPing back site on Inferno. He's always loved doing this, and he's actually really great at playing this position. So Fallen, with his AWPing on that B-bomb site, has always been really great to watch. He has a really great knowledge actually of how aggressive he can get away with staying, and he always rides right on that line between too aggressive and if he went any more, he would give away picks, but he's playing right in the ballpark to get the opening kills for MIBR. Now, in late round 5v5s and late round 4v4s in particular, Fallen will often become the Bianca, as is standard for top teams when they're on the double AWPs. They'll normally play retake from coffins, which allows them to over rotate onto the A site and leave less gaps in terms of that long arch and CT wrap area. So in a similar vein, their map knowledge and timing looks pretty good in terms of rotations as from the matches I've seen so far in Inferno, and they're definitely in good stead going forward from my perspective. Anyway, let's move on to Mirage. Now, got to keep in mind here, I've literally only seen one game of them playing Mirage, so I'm going to have to make quite a few assumptions off just this game combined with what I knew about the previous lineup on Mirage. So we'll start off on the CT side. Now, their only game they played was against Complexity, and this game, I watched it just for writing this up, and this really wasn't great in terms of learning much about MIBR on CT Mirage. It was pretty obvious from the start of this game they had zero respect for Complexity. They were throwing in loads of individual aggressions. The multiple rounds were Fur pushed underpass, which some players do, but not as much as Fur was doing in this game, and this sort of thing. And I think they've paid the price during this game for playing for throwing in so many solo aggressions. And I think overall they actually looked quite sloppy on the CT side. They actually only got 7 rounds, and Complexity got 8. And I don't think many people consider Complexity to be an incredible Mirage team. Now, the reasons why they were sloppy on CT Mirage here, I'm not actually totally sure. I don't think it was anything in particular. Perhaps they were just underestimating Complexity, playing a bit too loose, playing a bit too aggressive, as we talked about a second ago. And they didn't really look their usual selves in terms of playing late round and during retakes. They made a few odd mistakes. I'm not really sure exactly what the reason for this was. And one thing that was really quite surprising during this game to see from MIBR was how little mid aggression they actually threw in. They actually only did it 1 round, and it was just Fur pushing on his own up towards top mid. And out of all the teams, I would have thought that MIBR was one of the most likely to utilise the top mid smoke and the molly in front of it, get really aggressive in mid and start playing behind it with aggressive players like Fur. Now, on the CT side of Mirage, I would expect Fallen to be the highlights player to watch. He loves to use his spawns, and he's always been really great actually at AWPing close ramp on that A-bomb, so he's really great at playing around this area. So definitely give him a watch. I think in terms of secondary AWPing, I think you'll see Taco picking up the second one quite a lot, AWPing in B apps, if this game and his time in Liquid is anything to go by. And I think he'll pass the AWP around between him and Cold Zero playing that short position. Now, moving on to the Terror side of Mirage, and bear in mind, I have an even smaller data set because they started on CT side and they blew out Complexity on the Terror side. I think MIBR actually looked quite different from the very few rounds that I've seen. They didn't default really at all in this game, and normally when I'm going through teams, I like to write down their default setups, who plays where. But during this game, I couldn't even work out what their default spots were on the Terror side because they literally defaulted so little. And during this game, they're throwing in loads of contact plays, explosive hits. They're varying up the timing loads and using different methods of taking mid. And this is all really, really good signs for MIBR going forward. Now, the former MIBR lineup was always moving in this direction away from playing so many slow rounds where they just apply individual map pressure, which is what 2016-2017 MIBR, or BLSK at the time, were really known for. So we'll just have to see more of MIBR on Inferno, and especially against on Mirage and against better teams to really get a feel for how good they are. So anyway, we'll next talk about Train. And once again, there's only been one map played of MIBR on Train, and during this game they're playing against NIP. So in this series, NIP picks into Train, which I think, even though we haven't seen MIBR with this lineup, with what we know about the previous lineup, I think this was actually a pretty sizable mistake by NIP to pick into it, and we'll talk about why this is in a moment. So let's start off on the CT side. And the first thing we should do here is talk about the previous lineup on the counter-terror side of Train. So towards the end of last year with the Stewie and Tarek lineup, I think MIBR was the world's best team on CT Train. And there are many reasons for what made them so great. Now, a big one is how incredible they are at playing aggressively on the outer bomb site. Now, it's early days, certainly early days, but with this team it looks much of the same. So they rarely respect the sandwich and E-box smokes, and they love to use their utility, get in front of them and deny the T's that space on that outer bomb site. They're also really, really good at making mid-round info plays into pop and main, and they get loads and loads of kills and information during doing this during the mid-round, and I'm sure this will be a staple of their CT train going forwards. So because of how much they like to be aggressive in the outer area, you'll often see them play what I like to call give Ivy setups, and this is when, instead of having just a player sat in Ivy, you instead have the first contact onto Ivy from either Hell or background, with that background normally being an AWPer, but now with the AUG, perhaps you could play it with that instead. And I think because of this, you'll often see Fallen playing around background or being towards Ivy in these sorts of setups. So what they also like to do is play Fur as a rifle on the rotator a lot, whereas most teams would actually have the AWPer do it instead. Now, during this game versus NIP, they didn't double AWP. I don't think they actually double AWPed at all during this game, but if history is anything to go by, it'll be cold to pick up the second AWP towards Ivy, and back green normally playing solo from these areas, with Fallen moving, either playing aggressive B angles early to be B ramp, or up peaking on a good spawn, or he'll be playing connector as the rotator. So moving on to the terrace side on train, I've literally only seen a few gun rounds. Again, they blew out NIP on the terrace side of train. So from watching the previous lineup, when Yanko came in, I think they threw in much more pacey rounds towards the B bomb site to try and punish teams for delaying the rotation of the second player over after they'd given Brownhorse control. This was actually really a common trend across the top teams last year, just taking this risk, because it was very, very rare actually people get their bluff called. They used to overstack the A site, give it about 15-20 seconds before rotating that player over, just kind of risking it to have a stronger A site defense during this period of the round. So apart from that, I'm not really sure what MIBR is going to bring on the terrace side of train. I feel like throwing in the sandwich, or the sandwich and E-box smokes are very likely, with getting Fur out aggressive towards behind the sandwich smoke, or perhaps out all off, this sort of thing. And we'll just really have to wait and see how MIBR pans out on that front. So again, apologies for not commenting on the other maps for MIBR, but it really would just be pure speculation and probably a waste of everybody's time to sit here and listen to me talk about it. But I will just say, from looking at their vetoes, I have a hunch that Cash might come out in the playoffs from MIBR, and with the previous line they were pretty good on Cash, so they might have practiced it quite a lot coming into this tournament. Anyway, let's summarise and talk about this lineup change into going back to full Brazilian and bringing Zeus back. Now, I'm a big fan of them actually moving back to a full Brazilian lineup, and it's hard to say with the previous one how much communication impacted their issues. They did get a lot better towards the end of the year, but certainly towards the middle of the year they're really having a lot of problems, and it's hard to say how much communication played its role in that. So when they made the change to going English, I think on both sides they never looked as good in the late round, and it was definitely late rounds after Barn scenarios where the old SK teams were really, really good, and hopefully now moving back to full Brazilian lineup they have that back in their wheelhouse. Now Zeus coming back to the team I think is a really big steal for MIBR. I think he played a bigger role in shaping Liquid to the team they are today, and now working with Fallen, I think the pair of them can do really great things and get MIBR back on track. So something that does deserve mentioning here is the role problem. Now, for people that weren't around the scene back in 2017 when they originally brought Phelps into this core of players, there was a lot of discussion about the role problem in this team, because Fur and Phelps were both very similar players, and basically going into more specifics, basically one of them on the C side was going to have an anchor bomb site, because Cold Zero, being the star player, was not going to give up his rotated positions. So the whole point was it was going to be really hard to balance these two aggressive players on the CT and the T side. Now coming into this team, of course I've barely seen them play with Phelps again. It's really hard to comment, and I didn't watch much of Phelps playing when he was out of SK and MIBR, so I don't really know how much he's changed as a player, but it seems likely that now he's more experienced, it might go a bit more smoothly on that front. Now I'm going to round this one out with quite a bold prediction. I think there are two teams in the world that have a shot of surpassing Astralis over the next 6 months, and one of these should be no surprise, and one is Team Liquid, then definitely go and watch my profile team Liquid to get a feel for why I'm saying this. And the other one is MIBR. Now, MIBR has so many great pieces in this team, and I've always respected Fallen's calling a lot. I think he did a lot. So when we had the round and bomb timer change back in 2016, I think Fallen was the main person pushing the game forward in terms of how we now play CT and Terra side with these new round and bomb timers, this sort of thing. And I think as a core of players in this team, they've shown time and time again that they can adapt, and perhaps the wake-up call of worse results across 2018 will be exactly what they need to get themselves back into world-class form. Anyway, why don't you comment below with your thoughts on the new MIBR lineup? Do you like the change back to Taco, Zeus and Phelps, or did you prefer the Tarek Stewie lineup? Anyways, if you enjoyed that one, why don't you hit that like button, get subscribed, follow me on Twitter, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.